So this tutorial is more of inspiration or coming up with ideas on how you can run a multi-camera production and how to do it, whether with either staffing or no staffing. We've encountered that a couple of times throughout the school year, but each facility is really different. They have like our baseball and softball setup is way different. We have a lot of challenges to that, and with year one with the production, it kind of gave Kyber and me a chance to kind of evaluate and see what we can do going into year two. So year one was more of an experimental stage for us. And so we tried different angles. We tried different methods with how we run the production. But for the most part, um, this was all student worker run. The student workers and our staff, our game management staff, ran the production. They chose the camera angles, the who to look for, and all that sorts of stuff. The only thing that Kyber and I have done was provide words of wisdom, guidance, and of course suggestions. I mean, we are the head of the production, but we do let them kind of dictate on what would work well and what would not work well. I've asked Kyber if to chime in if there's anything that I have forgot to mention, but for the most part, I hope I can get everything in. We'll stick sport by sport, like I said, and then as always, if there's any questions during the sport, I know there's going to be a lot to cover, but if there's a question on the production angle in those things, feel free to hesitate to ask. Don't hesitate to ask. So I'm going to start with soccer, mainly because I think, in my opinion, soccer was the most difficult. Not because of the camera angles or the pace of the sport, but the communication. The communication was and always will be very critical if you're running a multi-camera production. We have the EarTech headsets. These are we paid about $600 for a 4-set, and it's basically just a headset, kind of like what you see with a football coach wearing them. And then when you bring the microphone down, it's hot mic. There's no button to push or anything like that. And then when you're done with it, you just put the microphone up and then you're just listening. So we learned that about the hard way about a month into the production. And as soon as we got those headsets, it became a difference maker. So I strongly suggest that you purchase those EarTech headsets, and you can also use it for table production, which is probably what's going to happen with COVID in the spring, but we'll get to that. That's another story there. So I pulled out the operations manual that I made and kind of going over the inventory list of how our production is set up for multi-camera angles. We've made some additions to it as well as the year passed, but this was the initial setup. This was hardwire production. So we did not receive the wireless capability until January. So for the entire soccer and volleyball season and half of the basketball season, this is how we set everything up. I'm going to initially set up, I'm going to picture us setting up for hardwire up until we get to baseball and softball. So as you can see, we have the 4 cameras. The 3 red cables are the SDIs, which each of those are 100 feet long, 100 foot long. And then this is also an important device, the Blackmagic DeckLink Duo. It's 2 separate devices. The Sonet Echo Drive is this black box that you need to purchase. And then you need to go to Blackmagic and purchase the DeckLink Duo, and you have to install it yourself. It's very easy, very piece of cake. Just make sure, just open the box and slide the card in, close the box, and you're ready to go. Just make sure you're wearing a anti-static wristband when you're installing it. But overall, it's a 3-minute setup. installation. So this is how we set everything up for our simple hardwire production. So we'll go here. So this is the wireless capability that we have here. We use the ICANN. They have been phenomenal for us ever since we got them. This one here can reach 500 feet with obstruction, and then 1,200 feet with complete line of sight, no interference. And I will come back to that with baseball because there are obstacles with that. But we'll save that for later. This device is also HDMI capable as well as SDI. So if you're running an HDMI camera, this will work for it. Kyber and I haven't really had a chance to play with the HDMI portion. We've always used SDI. It was going to be our goal last spring to try it out, but we never got to it. So this is, we'll skip to that. We'll go to soccer, which I think is the toughest of them all. So this was how we set everything up for soccer hardwired. So initially we put all 3 cameras upstairs with our production truck and our crowd mic. Everything was upstairs on top of the stand, the highest part of the bleachers. And, you know, we tried to separate the cameras as far as we can from each other, just so we can look at different angles. We can experiment with those and then see what else we can do with that. Before we have the wireless, so with the wireless, we were thinking about putting the 4th camera down on the field, but that's another experiment. But initially, the 4th camera was up here, and what we did with that 4th camera was we aimed it at the scoreboard and used that to put the clock on the lower third scoreboard display. We did not have the score hub at the time, so this was the method that we did with the 4th camera. But this is usually a 3-camera setup, and so that's how it was set up for soccer. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open up a file. I compiled a bunch of clips from a soccer match that we had earlier late in the year, and I'll kind of follow you and explain some of the things. But the one thing, this was actually kind of a good accident to happen, was our student workers mistakenly set the crowd mic. They didn't turn it on. They actually aimed the audio at one of the cameras. So Kiana, one of our student workers, was accidentally caught talking. Nothing was bad, of course, but it turned out to be perfect because we could use that as an example on how the headsets worked and how she communicated with Renee on the production truck and Kelsey, who is on the other camera. And then we have a 4th person who's on the center camera, and the center camera is, and you'll see this in this sample, the center camera never zooms in or out. That is actually our game film camera / main camera. And the reason we are using that camera is it's more like a reset. So, and you'll see how it goes as the production, as I show you the production, but it's a fallback in case the cameras 1 and 3 have lost control or lost view of the game and need to get caught up. So what Renee on the production truck does, if there's anything like that, she'll just switch to the middle camera and allow the other cameras to catch up. So, so the one thing that I've always liked is getting getting the student athletes' reaction, getting all the pregame hype, getting just anything that's happening other than the match. So I've always encouraged our student workers to do that. So because I think that makes it more fun and that makes it more interesting to follow. Especially, you know, I've always challenged them to try to balance the 2 teams. You know, give the visiting team some love, because who knows? For the most part, our audience is going to be the visiting team. So we want to make sure. So this is the center camera. Like I said, this camera does not zoom in or out, and it just follows the entire match. That's the game film and so on. So I'm gonna kind of stay a little quiet and let you guys hear what Kiana says. So this is camera 3. So we're getting closer to the action.
I got it, Kelsey. Don't worry about this side.
So Kelsey is now
go ahead and just
focusing on the action right there. That's Kelsey's camera right there.
I got the side kick.
You know, so center camera kind of resets it, allows them to kind of figure out what's going on, and then
probably can't get it.
The one thing you want to be very careful with is try not to move the camera too fast. So if the ball is gone like that, just either stay put or go to center camera like Renee just did, and allow the side cameras to get themselves set up.
Oh, it just blocked. Same thing, Renee. I got the side kick so that way Kelsey can just focus middle.
She meant throw in, but she's a softball student athlete. So it helps to have student athletes on the production because they can have a feel for what to look for. Just they picture themselves as athletes out there and see what they would do. Even though it's apples and oranges in sports, they kind of get an idea what to look for. There'll be other clips that I captured as well, but I just wanted to show everybody what the camera angles that we're using look like.
I got side.
So.
I'm getting on goal.
So this is camera 3. And then camera 1 is gonna.
No, Kiki's on.
So the other camera is actually gonna focus on the crowd. Look for the crowded part where the ball is likely to get thrown in. And there it is. So in just a few moments, we'll be switching to a different scenario. Here. So this is what a free kick will look like. So we focus one camera on the kicker, and then the other is focusing where everybody's lined up. And then the person who took the free kick catches up and just starts kind of looking around the act, getting the feel for the action. This one right here is a goal. So we got.
Okay, I'm gonna go to goal.
So there was a bit of confusion on their end with this, but it wasn't.
I'll get celebration.
It didn't hurt the broadcast. I mean, they both kind of had the same idea. There was a miscommunication on that part. But the one thing I've always liked is to get the celebration for both teams. I've always asked them to do that because then what else happens is that we use that on social media. We post this on our social media accounts.
You want me to get back
Twitter.
on kick?
So this is what the camera angle looked like from center camera, right? You can't see it, right? You can't really see it. So we're going to show it again in a close-up. So you can see that closer to the action gives them ability to see the goal and how it was scored. Not to mention for SIDs, you can actually catch the assist a lot better. So this is a free kick in the box. So everybody is in the box, so that's where the other camera is. And then we stayed on that part. So that was that's a free kick in the box. This one's a corner kick. And then what happens is then they switch to the center camera and allows the other cameras to reset themselves. And excuse me, I also like to get conferences, you know, with the officials, just so people, the audience knows what's going on, like what's the delay. Same thing with substitutions. The headsets work out so well. Like the person on production truck can tell the cameras that there's a substitution happening, who's going to get the sub, and this is what it turns out. Multiple subs are hard to figure out, but you know, it's no harm, no foul with it. That's all I got for soccer. So the one thing that I've emphasized is that communication is key. So you know, if you're running on 3 camera angles, obviously 2 are going to get closer to the action. It's important that they communicate with each other just so that they're not covering the same position. So, for example, the corner kick, who's going to take the corner? You know, who's going to cover the box? So that's kind of how the strategy comes into play. So it's more of improvising than just going with what a script. So are there any questions with soccer? Okay.
I guess the only thing I'm wondering about is like either going wireless or going with the cable wires, because like our setup's a little different. We have an actual press box where we wouldn't really be set up on the bleachers. So I'm just trying to figure out how it would work with the actual cables, because I mean those can just kind of get in the way sometimes, and then even then it's going to be hard to figure out a way to run them all from one place. So I don't know. So do you recommend the cables or the wireless?
Wireless all the way.
Yeah. Okay. That's
wireless. So excuse me. Wireless is it's a lot easier to set up. You know, you just plug and play, and like I said before, we didn't get the wireless equipment until January, so we were pretty much stuck with an entire volleyball and soccer season with hardwire, which was it wasn't a bad thing, you know. For our facility, you know, the hardwire, we just tuck it under the bleachers, and nobody's really up there. Nobody goes that high up. So, but we tuck it under the bleachers for safety precautions. And at times we'll jump to the other sports, but for soccer, we have such a spacious facility, as you can see. You know, now that we've gone wireless, Kyber and I have had talks about setting up on the field level with camera angles. My recommendation is watch Cal Poly Pomona's broadcast, because Tyler Lobe does have cameras down on the field. I'm sure you've seen it in your matches against them. And that'll kind of give you an idea on the difference between setting up the cameras upstairs and down on the field level. But to answer your question, Eric, I think wireless is the way to go. But if you're in a budget constraint, then there's nothing wrong with the hard wires whatsoever.
One thing I will say about the hardwire is that you'll get a clear picture no matter what, because sometimes with the wireless, you might get interference or what have you, and you'll lose picture and have to reset it or adjust. And so at least with the wires, you'll guarantee to have a picture, unless like somebody physically cuts the cable or something.
The other reason too is the battery. You know, if you go wireless, make sure you purchase extra batteries, especially baseball doubleheaders. You're going to need it. I think Kyber, we've gotten away with basketball with one battery. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, it's mainly for baseball, softball.
Yeah,
baseball,
the long base, softball, the long games.
The soccer, we're definitely going to need it for the batteries.
Yeah. So extra batteries are going to be very important if you're going to use wireless production. But the one thing that we also do is we don't use all our wireless. We actually hardwire. Um, we hardwire one camera to the Blackmagic device, mainly
Hmm.
for that very reason. Is because if the battery dies or if there's a connection problem, then we have something to fall back on. You know, the center camera, right? So you could just stay on the center camera, and this has happened to us before at baseball and softball where we just can't get the different camera angles going. We have the one camera that's hardwired. We'll stick to that, and then it'll give us the time we need, or as much time as we need to resolve the issue. So so it's kind of there's positives and negatives to hardwire and wireless. So it's just how your department wants to do it.
Yeah, I got you. And like you were saying with Pomona, I'd like to have a camera down the field too. But yeah, as you also mentioned, these budget cuts aren't making it easy.
No,
So
they're not. You know,
it's,
we're very lucky on that part that we got it before the pandemic. Um, you know, the one thing that I've always done was I've listened to my staff because they're the ones that are actually running this production. And you know, I can watch the production and I can provide input, but it's them that's really doing it. And I feel like, especially with my student workers, like I want to challenge them, you know, and they know that they want the challenge. You know, they want to be creative. They want to try new things. And um, when I had my exit meetings with them, you know, I asked them, you know, what's your preference? Do you think we should stay upstairs with all the cameras or go down to the field level? And for the most part, a lot of them said that it was easier being upstairs because they can see what's going on throughout the whole field instead of being down on field level where it's like, what the heck's going on down there? It's hard. There's too many bodies that they're trying to deal with. So, uh, you know, you'd be surprised with student workers. They, you know, especially the ones that, you know, put an effort into this and take pride in this work. So,
I got you. But cool, good answer.
so, so that's soccer. I'm going to go back to the manual real quick and volleyball. So the other sports are starting to become a lot easier now. There's a lot better strategy involved with volleyball and basketball, and especially baseball and softball. So it gets a little bit easier. There's still challenges like the communication part, but for the most part, there's a lot of strategy involved with volleyball. So this is how we set everything up. So when we were at the hardwire, we set our production truck right here on press row because we have our announcer right next to the computer, and then we run 3 of those red cables up to here. And they're right next to each other, and we kind of figured out and improvised to this format that you are about to see. But these are the power outlets for our gym. Our Ethernet is actually on the wall down below the underneath the bleachers, so we have to run an Ethernet cable all the way up here. You can go Wi-Fi with production truck, but it's not recommended. I mean, we have to go Wi-Fi for baseball and softball, but everything else, we stick to Ethernet all the way. So, so there's a lot of strategy involved with volleyball in a fun way. So here's an example that we did with just a sample broadcast, and there's some highlights that I captured or that my student workers captured that you would like to see. So this is just a normal production. So the way it works is the 3 cameras, the 2 cameras 1 and 3 are focusing on their side of the court. And then I'm going to take a step back here. So camera 1 is focusing on this side right here, and then camera 3 is focusing on this side. Camera 2, if there is somebody stationary, which I have for several clips. They kind of move the camera slowly. You know, you don't want to go too fast, or else you're gonna get your audience sick. But this is kind of how the setup was. And then when a point is when the rally is over and the point goes to, for example, the Toros, camera 3 focuses on the celebration, and then camera 1 is actually getting the next service, and it's vice versa. So so this is camera 1's angle capturing the service, and then back to camera 2, and then back to camera 3 when well, obviously the camera was not ready. Camera 3 was not ready. So that's an example right there. We also do the same for the visiting team. Same setup on their side. So we kind of treat them the same way. So here's a couple of rallies that were won by San Francisco. So you can see that the center camera is moving, but not too fast. And then so it's going to focus on camera 3. Camera 3 captures the sub. Camera 1 is going to get the server. And then if we won the point, camera 1 will get the celebration. Camera 3 will focus on the next service. So and then the key for the center camera is, in addition to not going too fast, but you also want to plan ahead. You know eventually there's going to be an attack coming, and I'll show you another example in just a moment. Just want to capture one more of this, and then we'll go to the next one. So you can see that camera 2 kind of stayed put with us, our side, and then camera 3, and then allowed camera 2 to reset. So this one is this one's actually one of my favorite. This one's a favorite highlight of mine, and you'll see why. The celebration. Our libero, she just loves celebrating everything, and we try to capture those moments, and we can put those in highlights. We love capturing those player reactions. Here's another one that was done by her. Another favorite of mine. So you can see the camera 2 went that far back, didn't go too fast, and then just got itself back to the middle. And then we get the celebration, the reaction. So this one right here is a stationary setup. So when we were kind of a short staff, we set one camera up on the corner, and it does its purpose. It's a good angle if you are just looking for something simple, or if you don't have enough people on camera. You could just set this camera up on the corner, and then you can capture these kind of cool blocks or any attacks from that angle. So that's the one nice thing about the hardwire setup at our gym is once you're under the bleachers, you can put those cables wherever you want, and it's not a hazard. I mean, it's a hazard for us, but there's no risk involved with spectators. So this is actually what it looks like on camera 1 entirely. So this is camera 1 just focusing on the Toro side. Now note that in a previous or future presentation that with Production Truck, you can actually capture replays from your camera angles strictly. So whenever somebody hits capture, like this one right here, it's capturing camera 1 entirely. So there's no camera angle switching or anything like that. This is just that camera in particular. And then my last example here is the same thing, just kind of focusing on one camera angle. And there's, you know, I've always reminded my student workers, just remember that whoever's on production truck may accidentally be using your camera angle. So even if you're trying to go fast, just keep in mind that there could be an accident where the wrong camera or the production truck is using the wrong camera. So that's kind of what we do for volleyball. It's, like I said, there's a little bit more strategy involved, but I think it's a lot easier than soccer. Do you have any volleyball questions? Okay. Staying in the gym, we will go to basketball. So basketball was kind of a half and half for us, like I said, where we didn't have the wireless until midway through the basketball season. So this is how we set up for wireless now. So we do use the wireless to its full potential in basketball. So our production truck is over here, and then camera one, the center camera, is up top. So we do use the wireless. Before we got the wireless, when we were hardwired, we actually set up our other half of these tables right here were on this side, and our LEDs are on this side. But our production was actually right here, and we just ran a hardwire through this entire side. And what we did for the baselines is actually we put a rug on each end, and then kind of set everybody up like right here. That was kind of the best we did. And then once we went wireless, it just became an easier setup for us. So that was kind of how our setup is.
Hey,
Yep.
Rick.
Yes.
Oh, you just cut off there for a second. Sorry.
Oh, am I? Everybody still let me see my screen? Okay. So this is our setup for basketball. In case I got cut off, it's pretty self-explanatory. And if there's any questions or if there's any parts where I broke up that I missed or that you missed, just feel free to ask me. So anyways, I'm going to show you some highlights real quick for basketball. Let's see here. So this is with the wireless setup. So the one thing we focus on is after a basket is made, or let me take one step back. When the ball's in play, we always stay on this camera. And then when a basket's made, that's what we do. But for the most part, when the ball is live and all the action's happening, we stay on this camera as long as we can. Obviously, we do have moments where, you know, we want to get celebratory moments like this one. One of our walk-ons, you know, got his start, and this is like the very first play that he saw as a starter, and he hits a three-pointer. You know, we had to get the reaction for that. That was a good setup for that. We do use the so here's a couple of baseline looks to it. So here's one baseline angle. So the key is, you know, try to focus on the ball, but be ready for a pass or a shot, all those things that go with it. So this one did a very good job with the camera angle on staying on the baseline and staying with the play without making the camera look so crazy. Same thing with same thing, but this one is actually with on the other side of the floor. So this camera is staying with the ball and then getting it at that angle there. So it's the same. This is actually the same play, but just with a different angle. So, you know, I also like to capture bench moments. Like I get our coach, you know, like these things, you know, capturing the coaches, capturing player reactions. This can come in handy for interviews and B-roll footage if you're ever making a interview production, kind of like a Bob Costas type interview in the future. So that's something else that I've asked my student workers to do for us, is try to capture those kind of moments so we can use them. Here's a good angle here from the baseline of a good layup. This one was actually hardwired, so this is as far as we can go with our excuse me, with our cameras. This one is actually a live feed. So our center camera is staying put, keeps going. And then as soon as the basket's made, they switch camera angles, and then they get back to midcourt. Do you have any questions for basketball? Pretty easy. Okay. Baseball and softball, for me personally, I'm not only it's my favorite sport, but I thought this was the most fun out of it. So this was the setup that we did with the wireless. So we do have a fourth camera set up out in center field. We are very fortunate that our softball field, this is a hill along this path here. So we could actually set this up and capture the behind the pitcher view right there. We do have a press box at our softball facility. So we set everything up on the roof of the press box. Unfortunately, we're encountering some sort of interference with our Wi-Fi inside the press box, so we had to put our production on the roof of the press box, which is not a bad thing for us. I mean, it's worked out even better, I think. And then cameras 2 and 3 are right near the dugout. Like I said, there's strategy involved with this. So the way we have it set up is, let's say, for example, the bases are empty. You know, if it's a left-handed batter, camera 2 will focus on the left-handed batter, and then camera 3 will focus on the pitcher. And that's kind of what it was. That's kind of how we did it for that. And then if it's a right-handed batter, we just flip it the other way around. Now, if there's a runner on first, this is camera 2 will focus on the first base runner in case if they try to steal. And then camera 3 will just either focus on the pitcher or the batter. It's up to them. I try asking them not to do back shots of the batter. So if camera 3 is looking at a left-handed batter, I mean, it's out of their hands, but you know, then just focus on the pitcher. If there's runners on second and third, camera 3 will get the lead runner. So if the ball's in play and the run scores, camera 3 is actually going to capture that moment. And then while camera 2, if the ball's in play, is going to capture the batter runner. So that's kind of how the strategy goes with that. And then this is our softball setup. Baseball, we have a little bit more of a challenge comparing to softball. As I mentioned to you earlier, that the wireless devices that we have can only reach up to 500 feet overall, but 1,200 feet with a line of sight. So our press box, we set our fourth camera up on top of our press box. I'm eventually going to try to get a platform installed here and put the camera right here, and hopefully that'll fix that. But in the meantime, we were trying to clear, I think, Kyra, was it 600 feet? Something like
Yeah,
that?
something close to that. Yeah, 600,
Yeah.
I think.
600 feet. And we had all sorts of obstacles with the line of sight. I think a lot of it had to do with our fence backstop, just might have been interfering with it. So what we did was we put the receiver for this camera on the roof of our container. And that way you can get a clear sight between the two and there's no obstruction. So that's kind of how we did it with that. The side cameras, we pretty much can go either side of the dugout with this side. Camera 3 is right next to our dugout. Camera 1, since we don't have a high enough point of view, we just try to go as high as we can with the bleachers and do our best. What I also do is we set up our production underneath the bleachers behind our bleachers, I'm sorry. And kind of, it's a little bit of privacy, but at the same time, we put a canopy over them so that way any foul balls come their way, they're not going to get hit. And then to kind of help strengthen the signal on this side, we actually run one of the red long cables to this part right here and set up a receiver for this camera angles here. And the same thing goes with we run one red cable over here to capture the signal. If in the event you're in a pinch with staffing, I did capture an angle with this example, as an example, and we set one camera on top of our dugout and it pointed at home plate. We haven't really tried anything on this side yet, but the one thing that our student workers liked was that angle right here. It was a good second option. So here are some examples of what we did for baseball and softball. So this one is actually a stolen base. So this is our behind the pitcher view. This is on top of the hill. Notice that black, how it went blank. You could run into that. That could be a schedule or an interference with the signal, or your battery could be dying. And we capture the player reaction just like that. This is our baseball setup. So we have our center camera right here. We have a camera right here. And then there's another camera on the other side of the dugout, the other dugout. So we try to zoom in and get closer to the action. The fence is causing it to mess with the focusing. And then you can see that camera 3 focused on the lead runner. So there was a runner at third base, and that camera 3 was focusing on the runner at third to capture that moment right there. Because remember, like, there's so much going on, and this is the one thing I don't like about the baseball and softball is just how one camera like this, you're not going to know what's going on as much, right? So what I told my student workers is just get this, because the throw-in part's kind of boring, right? And if there's a play at home, you can capture that moment. So this one is so we have camera 2 is actually focusing on him. And we capture the moment. As you can see, you can't really see what's going on, right? Because that fence is just making it more difficult. So I've always told my student workers, just focus on the batter runner and just, see what happens there. If there's going to be a play that's going to happen, it's going to happen on him. So here's another example from softball of a defensive play. So bases are empty. We just focus on the pitcher. Obviously, you could do that with one camera, but with multiple cameras, it gives you that flexibility. Because then if something goes wrong, you can go to another camera. And then this one is a favorite of mine.
Hey,
even though,
Rick, can you go back to that video again?
Yeah, of course.
Sorry.
So what do you want? You want me to play?
Another thing, well, I just want to go to the beginning because we switched on this video. We switched too early because you know, with the whole Houston Astros sign stealing thing, you know, I kind of want to switch the camera to the behind the batter view after, or behind the pitcher view after the catcher drops the sign. So if you play it, that you could still see the catcher sign. But that's just a tip.
So he's just waiting for the signal. I mean, this one came a little late.
Yeah, so right there you see the sign still there. But I mean
that's but yeah, so he's got a point there. A lot of schools are not going to be doing the center field camera, so just kind of keep that in mind. And coaches, we do have coaches that'll probably get a little bit nervous by that, but for the most part, I think coaches, from coaches I've talked to, they love that camera angle.
For viewing wise, that thing's great, but you may want to check. I almost think on the baseball side, because it was questioned when I think Pomona has one of those. That was actually questioned. I thought there was a conference requirement part of it regarding where you could place cameras and as far as that kind of thing because of that issue.
There wasn't really anything said on that. It was mostly, the broadcast was kind of, I mean, that's for scouting reports, but for a production, that was never called upon. And then, so there's a CC2A SID's working group on coming up with setting production standards. And so that'll be announced sometime in the near future.
Okay.
But
because I mean, with the stuff going archive, with everything being in one location and it being archived kind of thing, I mean, then they'll use it for scouting purposes.
So
I mean,
this is where Bleuframe comes into play with the vCloud. Is a lot of schools will take their games off the archives, and hide it until the end of the season. San Marcos has done it for their baseball and softball. Pomona has done it. They've taken it off their practically everybody's been taking it off their CC2A network portal page. And then it's still there, but it's hidden. And then it's kind of a handshake agreement within the SIDs that we do not give coaches access to those clips, to those videos. But like I said, the working group is working on putting together those policies and then presenting it to the executive council for approval.
Okay.
So this one is a favorite of mine. Just capturing the reaction on the walk-off.
That's a home run for number 27, Roger.
This was actually our very first softball broadcast. And so we didn't know what to expect going in with how our production was going to be. And that's why it's one of my favorites, is that we showed that we have the ability to do all sorts of things with this production. You know, here's so this is a baseball setup here for a double or an RBI single. So we got runner on second. So that so camera 3 is focused on that person, and then what I like is they try to zoom in to get closer to the action in right field. This is actually on top of our dugout. So this is actually what it looks like when we set a stationary camera on top of the dugout. Nobody is up there, and the only time I go up there is to change the batteries on either the wireless or the camera itself. But so we were shorthanded with staffing, and that was kind of what the verdict was with the camera angle up here. I like this one here because it shows the pitcher. You know, kind of gives you an idea like how the pitcher's reacting, how the pitcher's feeling.
21, Nina Rivera.
You know, because everybody will probably like to know how's the pitcher doing. You know, and then this one right here. We didn't have this crossbar here. It would have been a good angle, but I also like capturing the reaction of those kind of plays. This one's another example. So she zooms in slowly, captures the catch, and then just goes right back there. So. And then our last one here, you know, like we've done with starters before, you know, we like to capture those kind of moments and use those for any videos that we were to make in the future. So, and that's how our baseball and softball setup is. As you can see, our production crew is actually on the roof here, and our center camera is right there. And just make sure that if you are going to be running wireless, just make sure you got umbrellas or something, because we learned it the hard way with the scorching heat that the sun will hit you pretty hard, especially come springtime and in the fall down in Southern California. So that's all I have for the sports. Is there any questions for softball or anything that I missed in the other sports?
No, I think that was pretty good. I think you covered a lot of things that I had questions on. It seems a little easier than I thought it would be, which is good news to me.
It's easier if you have the right student workers for the job. Like I said, student athletes are actually make good employees for this, because you know, eventually they want the same thing for their sport. You know, for example, softball, we have several softball student athletes on our staff that ran the production for volleyball and soccer, and then partially basketball. And then when the spring came up, we have a men's soccer, a volleyball, women's soccer student athletes. And, you know, they know each other. That kind of helps. But, you know, I think the one thing they were very excited about this production. I think that's the one thing Kyber and I kind of noticed, is how excited they were when they saw this. Trying to think if there's anything else that I missed, because there's always something. Oh, so here's an example. So you can hardly see it because I just pulled the screen. Let me see if I can. So you can see there's one of the wireless. There's one of the wireless receivers that we have. This one goes straight to center field, to the center field camera. So obviously, the higher you are with the receivers, the stronger the signal is going to be. So, and then we use this press box also for our baseball center camera. Those angles that you saw for baseball, that's where we set our camera up. So, all right. Well, if there aren't any questions, I think that's it. So, thank you guys, and as always, if you have if you have any questions, feel free to call Kyber or me, or I'm sure Tyler Lobe will be glad to give you some pointers for how he sets up his production. Brian Gall, I'm sure, for basketball and volleyball, I believe he uses wireless setup inside the Casulis Arena. So if you have any questions, just feel free to come to us.
Cool, guys. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks, Rick.
Mm-hmm.